population that I'm aware of where overhunting was a known concern. And so it was dealt with at the management level. Another population there was concern about overhunting. And what's interesting is that both of those two populations have had a recent survey, a population count. And one of them, the one where the overhunting was known to be a concern, that population has more than doubled.
Oh, okay. Wow, so that's good. So it's coming back.
The other population is now stable.
Mm-hmm.
So, those concerns have been alleviated.
Now, I remember a few years ago they were saying 1960 polar bear counts were around 5,000, and we're something like 25,000 today. But I haven't heard those numbers updated for a few years. Are those generally correct still?
Well, I use a baseline figure for in the 60s of about 10,000 because the range of estimates is between about 10 and 15,000. That's in the literature, and it's one of the issues I cover in my polar bear catastrophe book. And the 25,000 number is one that the Polar Bear Specialist Group, which is a member of the International Union for the Conservation of Nature, the IUCN, that's the number they use, even though it's out of date. The last Red List assessment for polar bears was done in 2015. Their number was 26,000, but the surveys that have been done since then, since it's not been updated, would bring that number to close to 30,000.
Oh, so effectively the population has doubled in the last, about 60 years?
Or tripled, really, if you go from 10,000 to 30,000.
Yeah, tripled. That doesn't sound very endangered to me. Now, about 2 years ago, then Environment Minister Catherine McKenna, she tweeted a movie of a starving polar bear, and I'll put a link of it up on the comments of our under our podcast. And it had the following text, and then she commented, I'll read her tweet as well. The video had, "This is what climate change looks like. This starving polar bear was spotted by National Geographic photographer Paul Nicklin while on expedition in the Baffin Islands. As temperatures rise and sea ice melts, polar bears lose access to the main staple of their diet, blah, blah, blah." No point in reading it all. And they're forced to wander into human settlements for any source of food. And then it says, without finding another source of food, this bear likely only has a few hours to live. And, he looked like a very old bear. And Minister McKenna, she made the following comment on that video. She said, "This is what climate change looks like. Climate change is real, as are its impacts. Time to stand up for our polar bears and our planet." I know it may be a little repetitive, but what do you think of Ms. McKenna's comment?
Well, for one thing, we know now that particular video was shot of a bear that there's no evidence that the bear was starving because of climate change. And in fact, National Geographic had to apologize for saying that this is what climate change looks like, because there was no evidence that was the case. And really, what we also know is that starvation is virtually the only thing that kills polar bears naturally. It's the leading cause of natural death for polar bears. And if they get sick, if they get old and can't hunt effectively anymore, then they die of starvation. It's the natural way of life for polar bears. And we also know that this photographer that took that video was up in the Arctic searching for more than a week at least, looking for a skinny bear that he could make an icon of climate change. And he finally found one. But in fact, there were not dozens of bears in the same condition. It simply wasn't the case. And all bears in that region come on land during the summer. It's what they do. They spend a couple of months on land. And that particular bear, at least looked to me, it looked to me like it was sick, that it had some kind of disease or medical condition that was causing muscular atrophy, and so even if it had something to eat, it just wasn't metabolizing it. But what this photographer did was he let the bear swim away, so nobody knows what happened to it.
Jeez.
And what we do know is that bears in that condition are extremely dangerous. They are desperate for food. And what the photographer did by just letting it swim away and not informing any authorities was that, say, an Inuit family coming and camping in that area to go hunting or to just go camping for some time would be extreme risk of being attacked.
Wow, so it's doubly irresponsible.
Absolutely irresponsible to have not reported it. But he wanted an exclusive, and if he'd reported it, that would have blown his exclusive moment.
Yeah. Geez, talk about fake news, eh? Jeez. Yeah. Well, it strikes me that pretty well the whole thing for the polar bear, a lot of it boils down to fake news. Well, we're going to continue this conversation actually in our next interview. Next week it'll be broadcast. And so, Susan, thanks so much for being on air with us today. Next week we'll get into talking about your new book, The Polar Bear Catastrophe That Never Happened. I have some quotes from that, and that'll be really fun to discuss. So thanks very much for being on air with us today, Susan.
You're very welcome. It's been a pleasure.